Sam Bankman-Fried at SBF _ FTX. Thread: FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried apologizes, says he fucked up, and his priority is doing right by users, plans to raise funds and close Alameda, and more. Related: Financial Times. A look at Sam Bankman-Fried's rise and fall in DC, becoming the face of crypto regulation, proposing bills, and testifying to Congress before FTX collapsed. Also related: Nicholas Day, CoinDesk. FTX tells users to close out positions as it may halt trading in days, hours after SBF said FTX US is 100% liquid. Some Tron-linked tokens can be withdrawn. Also related: Tracy Wang, CoinDesk. Current and former FTX and Alameda staff describe rampant conflicts of interest, nepotism, and a lack of oversight while SBF ran the companies with housemates. Also related: Nicholas Day, CoinDesk. BlockFi pauses withdrawals and asks users not to deposit to its wallet or interest accounts, saying it can't operate normally amid lack of clarity around FTX. Also related: Bloomberg. The Bahamas Securities Commission freezes the assets of FTX digital markets and related parties and appoints an attorney as a provisional liquidator. Also related: Zane Tackett at Tackett Zane. Thread: FTX's former institutional sales head looks at its balance sheet and options, including bankruptcy or issuing a token, and their pros and cons. Related: Wall Street Journal. Source: SBF told investors that Alameda owes FTX around $10 billion, and FTX extended loans to Alameda using customer funds, describing the decision as a poor judgment call. I think you could describe much of what is apparently happening around FTX and Alameda. I'm not sure what the relationship is there, as poor judgment calls. The optics of this business being led by one guy who, still dresses like he's in middle school, no matter what the occasion, I never thought looked particularly good. Maybe that is horrendously unkind of me. I don't look especially normal myself. And what is normal anyway, and what is the value of normal? Would this business have turned out differently if SBF, as we're now referring to him, dressed more the part of someone who was leading a business attempting to reshape the way global finance operates? I don't know. But if you are running your business with your housemates just as much, if not more, than you're running your business with your other members of your executive team or your board of directors or your strategic advisors. That's not a particularly good look. Also, an especially bad look to take customer funds, which is to say liquid, like currency that you're holding on behalf of a user, and use that money to extend loans to other businesses. That's a game that traditional banks play. Traditional banks are insured by the federal government. Like there's copy at the bottom of every, account opening document at a traditional bank, at least in the United States, that mentions the FDIC. And it's there to ensure that the bank as a business can become mismanaged to the point of failure, and at least up to a cap of, I believe it's $250,000 these days, as an individual user of that bank, your money's protected. It's guaranteed. That's not the case when you're rewriting the rules of global finance. And so I'm sure there's a lot of rich detail here for those who are particularly interested in this corner of the technology sphere, solar system. But for me personally, again, holding some amount of Bitcoin, ETH, those things make sense because they have shown the test of time. But even then, I can't imagine a sound argument for taking funds that one can't afford to lose and even putting them into those assets. And so those who sort of throw the majority of what they have into this world of cryptocurrency, this is yet another hard lesson. And my personal perspective continues to be, have faith in blockchains, little less faith in cryptocurrencies. Elizabeth Lapato, The Verge. Twitter reactivates its gray official badge for select high-profile accounts after a wave of impersonators bought blue checks. Related, James Vincent, The Verge. Some Twitter users say the option to sign up for $8 Twitter Blue has disappeared from its iOS app. An error message says it will be available in the future. Also related, Taylor, Hatmaker, TechCrunch. Fake Twitter accounts of athletes and other celebrities, some now suspended, are spreading fake announcements and chaos as paid blue check marks become available. Is this good? No. It's obviously not good to have your first experiment in substantively changing the experience of using Twitter to be flooded, whether that's an accurate term to describe this scenario or not, with bad actors. But did we expect anything better? Some people over the last week have described the process by which they attained their pre-existing verified status on Twitter. And in the stories I've heard, people had to submit, you know, photocopies of government issued IDs. They had to verify postal addresses. And I think it's obvious, if it wasn't already, that in 2022, the ability to provide a payment mechanism is not an adequate substitute for those things. So, yeah, there's going to be choppy water here for some period of time. Does that abate because people get bored with kicking Twitter because by proxy they're kicking Elon? I don't know, probably not. But the more important thing for me personally is that Twitter is continuing to experiment with how to create ways to identify the earnest actors in the system from the non-earnest actors in the system. Certainly, the ability to buy a blue check mark is not, it is not showing that only earnest users have access to it, but the official label is, as I said the other day, I think a good step in the right direction, right? We have labels for people that hold political office or are running for political office. We have labels for accounts that are spitting out automated information as opposed to being authored by individuals. We have verified accounts, and now we have official accounts. Whatever you think those terms mean, and however easy it may be to game getting an account into one of those categories, can you honestly say that Twitter would have been fine if we simply continued with the same process? The verification process has been dead in the water for quite a while at this point. And while this is a glaring example of the you want to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs, it's still a step toward making an omelet, in my opinion. And I think that's the place we would all appreciate Twitter getting to, is being better, more desirable, and providing a variety of ways to communicate to any given user in the system that these are accounts of a particular type, whether that type is they're automated or they're someone that paid $8. Not perfect, but I think a step in the right direction. Jason Del Rey, Vox, how Amazon's shopping experience, saturated with sponsored products, impacts sellers and consumers as its ad revenue surpassed revenue from Prime in 2022. It's nice to have a story that revolves around a business. Don't spend most of the week focused on. It's good to have a different main character every once in a while. Amazon's shopping experience has been, well, has left quite a bit to be desired, I think, for some time. The analog analogy for me individually is Fry's Electronics. If you grew up in California, you might remember Fry's Electronics. I was the kind of weirdo who would jump in the car with my fellow nerds and go to Fry's on a Saturday and just wander the aisles and like look at stuff. But the thing that was always clear was the only reason that you would go to Fry's, well, the only circumstance, conditions for going to Fry's to purchase something was if you knew exactly what you needed, and optionally, but very important, you knew exactly where it was. If you couldn't address those two things for yourself, it was, in some cases, sort of a fool's errand to walk into Fry's and ask someone to help you sort of solve a need that you had or hire something for a job that you had to be done. Amazon feels largely the same. If you know what you need, you can go to Amazon and you can ask for that category. But even within that category, trying to determine the right thing to buy is a disaster. You know, I had a kitchen scale for many, many years, and it just recently gave up the ghost. And so I went to replace it. And I thought, great, I can replace this thing with a device that doesn't run on batteries, has a built-in battery. So I picked the sort of most obvious USB-C kitchen scale. It arrived, seemed to work fine. And then the first time the battery drained, I plugged it in to the same USB connector that charges this computer that I'm using. No joy. I plug it into a different USB-C cable connected to the same, wall adapter. No joy. I change out the wall adapter. No joy. I go to the box. I pull out the shrinky-dink USB-C to USB-A cable that came in the box. Plug it in. It charges. There's a whole side conversation there about USB-C. But for the moment, the thing that's relevant is Amazon wasn't really able to help me determine which device was the one worth purchasing. And yeah, I'm thankful that the return policies at Amazon are healthy enough that I can take this kitchen scale and replace it for a different one and hopefully arrive at one that just charges with any USB-C connector. But that sort of fails the test, and it is a significant component of Amazon's shopping experience that I go and purchase something from Amazon even after I went and did my homework and still not sure if it's really the thing you need. Maybe a different way to look at this is ask yourself this question: of all of the purchases you make with Amazon, if you could, in broad strokes, quantify how much time you spend making those purchases, and the other part of your interaction with Amazon, which is returning the things that you don't want or didn't work or didn't fit or broke or whatever, which of those buckets does more of your time fall into? Because it's completely off the dome, but there's a part of me that wonders whether I spend more of my time interacting with Amazon, dealing with getting things back into their hands because they didn't do the job I needed, as opposed to going to the store, selecting the item, and having it delivered to me. That's no good. And I suppose the only other thing I can say is that it does seem to create at least the appearance of an opening in the market for some different type of e-commerce experience that isn't what Amazon provides today. And I look forward to seeing something like that at some point in the future. New York Times interviews with 36 current and former Twitter employees detail the excruciating chaos during Elon Musk's first 2 weeks in charge. Related, Bloomberg, Twitter's head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, resigned on November 10. Sources, head of ad sales, Robin Wheeler, also resigned, but Elon Musk convinced her to stay. Also related, Washington Post, Twitter employees are concerned about the rapid rollout of features without the security reviews required by the FTC's consent decree reached with Twitter in May. Also related, Alex Heath, The Verge, sources, Twitter's chief privacy officer, chief information security officer, and chief compliance officer have resigned. Legal now asks engineers to self-certify compliance with FTC rules. I'm going to do this one in kind of Rev Cron. The resignations of C-suite officials at Twitter, you can call that what it certainly appears to be and arguably is on its face, which is it's bad if people who have reached that level of impact on the business are more interested in walking away than they are in working for Elon. It's concerning that new product enhancements will be self-certified by the people who build them, as opposed to having a review process that involves some level of the organization's hierarchy. The notion of needing to conform to the rules that the FTC put on the government, on Twitter in the first place, also concerning. Heads of trust and safety and ad sales walking out the door, also concerning. There's plenty of legitimate worry to be had based on this series of machinations. The other thing that comes to mind, though, is, like it or not, Elon has a history of not being as concerned with what government agencies tell him he can and cannot do as he is with engineering toward his desired solution. And the excruciating chaos of working for him and working in the environment he's created at Twitter is, while no doubt legitimate and undesirable and damaging to people's health and well-being. Let's get all the way back up to the top line here. He's been in charge for 2 weeks. And you can look at that and say, holy cow, so much bad shit has happened in 2 weeks. Clearly the trend line must be toward even more bad shit in another 2 weeks, and 4 weeks after that, and 8 weeks after that, and on and on and on. But there's another way to look at it, which is it's only been 2 weeks. And for as much time and energy has been spent by Twitter employees over years talking about how important they feel Twitter is to them and how important they feel Twitter is to society at large, serving the global public conversation. That's the mission statement of the company the last time I checked. The notion that 2 weeks into someone whom you may not like controlling the company and making drastic changes, 2 weeks and you're done? Can't handle it anymore? It's not to say that you need to have like a thick enough skin to put up with this sort of nonsense. Anybody reaches their individual threshold for malarkey, by all means walk away. But it is difficult to see the number of people leaving who, if we roll the clock back 6 or 12 months, talked about being committed to the success of Twitter, if not as a business, then as an idea. And so I guess the way to bundle all of this up is simply to say, we've only been living through this for 2 weeks. And yeah, it's got real 45th president energy in terms of every time you wake up, if you're the sort of person who is concerned about Twitter's existence, whether you're an addicted user or an employee or both, the first thing you think is, what did the guy in charge say next? I get that feeling. I can empathize with that feeling. But let's see where we are in another 2 weeks. Let's see where we are in another 12 weeks. I just think that that's for something which so many people, both employees and not, have felt is so valuable to the culture, to, after 2 weeks, say, I'm done. Can't hack it anymore. I can't put up with this nonsense. I can't be party to it. I can't support it. I can't give them $8. I'm going over here. I have love for all of you, those I know and those I don't. But respectfully, there's a little bit of like fair weather fan energy coming off of that decision. And I think if this is a thing you think is really important, knuckle down. It's going to be hard. Aaron Wu, the information sources at an all hands, Elon Musk told staff that Twitter may have a net negative cash flow of billions in 2023, and bankruptcy is not out of the question. Related, The Verge, Elon Musk says Twitter will not survive without significant subscription revenue, and that the company needs roughly half of revenue to come from subscriptions. The details of the financing, something I'm not especially familiar with, but my pure guess is that there's a runway that's measured in months, maybe even years, for Twitter to work with now. I would be shocked if the banks and the other high net worth entities that Elon wrapped up into a coalition in order to be able to buy the company, if those entities were expecting their money back by the end of this year. Again, I could be totally wrong. I haven't read the deal in detail. I'm not a finance freak. But the notion that the company could have net negative cash flow and that it may have to declare bankruptcy in order to seek protection from having to pay off its debts, you can look at that as a sign of poorly run business. Sometimes that's the case. You can also look at it as if you're going to drastically change how the business perpetuates itself, those are circumstances which may be necessary, which is not to say that you couldn't have done it in some other way. But the related story, the notion that roughly half of Twitter's revenue needs to come from some form of direct subscription, that, while it sounds absurd on its face, and many people have made effectively the same comment, which is the users create the content, they create the value. Why would the users then be the ones obligated to pay to do so? I think that that mental model assumes that Twitter will stay largely what it has been. And I just don't believe that's Elon's plan. To the extent that he has been clear about what his plans are, the notion of building Twitter into something that bears a closer resemblance to WeChat than it does to Facebook, that's a tool where you may well be provided with enough utility that it's worth spending some amount of money on a regular basis. All of that remains to be seen. Again, we're 2 weeks in. There's a lot of game yet to be played, but the idea that subscription revenue could not possibly grow to be a meaningful pillar for Twitter, the business, and its financial solvency, I don't think that's something worth dismissing out of hand. Again, we can all be unhappy and afraid and upset about how much it appears Twitter is about to change and how much it has changed just in the last 2 weeks. But I continue to believe that Twitter.com, Twitter the business, separate from the idea of sort of Twitter as a final form of social networking, which I still very much believe, Twitter the business needs to change. I wouldn't surprise me if you could get Elon in an off-the-record setting. He would tell you that that's part of why he bought it in the first place. In addition to maybe his more self-serving perspectives, like, I wanted to ensure that I could never be banned from Twitter because I use Twitter as the marketing vehicle for all of my other business pursuits. I don't think that's inaccurate either. But subscription revenue becoming a pillar and negative cash flow of very large numbers, which may or may not lead to having to declare bankruptcy, those things strike me as, perhaps necessary evils to get Twitter from where it was to where it could be.